You know that moment. The game's on. Everyone in the room is screaming. Someone spills their drink, someone else is crying, actually crying because a grown man missed a ball. And you're sitting there thinking, why does this feel like it has nothing to do with me? Not because you're cold, not because you hate fun, but because something in your brain just doesn't fire the way everyone else's does. Here's the question nobody asks. What if that's not a defect? What if that silence in your brain while the whole room loses its mind over a scoreboard is actually telling you something about who you are at a neurological level? And here's what I really want you to think about. Why do some humans become completely obsessed with sports tribalism while others feel totally immune to it? What does that split actually reveal about how differently human brains are wired for identity? Keep that question with you. Don't let it go, because this entire video is building toward that answer. And when it lands, it's going to reframe a lot of things you thought you already understood about yourself. If you've ever nodded politely at a sports conversation you had zero interest in, welcome. If you've ever felt like an alien at a Super Bowl party, a World Cup gathering, or a cricket match where everyone else seems to be running on a completely different emotional frequency than you, welcome. You're about to feel less alone than you have in years, because this video isn't about bashing sports. It's about understanding the psychology of a very specific type of person, the one who watches a stadium full of 70,000 people lose their minds and quietly wonders, what am I missing? Spoiler, you're not missing what you think you're missing, but we'll get to that. Society has a word for people like you. Boring. Maybe antisocial. Definitely not a team player. But psychology, actual peer-reviewed science, has a very different word, and today we are breaking down the full psychological profile of people who don't obsess over sports, the traits they share, the neurological wiring behind it, and, this is the part that's going to stay with you, what it reveals about how they experience meaning, identity, and human connection in a way that most people around them will never understand. But before we go further, sit with this for a second. Is the need to belong to a sports tribe actually a sign of healthy social bonding? Or is it a borrowed identity, something someone else handed you before you were old enough to choose for yourself? That question sounds simple. It is not. And the answer is going to make you look at every sports fan you know in a completely different way. We're coming back to it. Let's start with the brain. When a sports fan watches their team score, their brain releases dopamine, the same chemical triggered by food, physical touch, and social approval. Researchers call this BIRGing, basking in reflected glory. The fan didn't score. They didn't train, they didn't sacrifice anything, but their brain acts like they personally won. Now here's where it gets interesting. People who don't obsess over sports typically show lower responsiveness to group-based dopamine triggers. They don't get the chemical hit from collective winning, but, and this is absolutely crucial, their dopamine system isn't broken. It's just differently calibrated. Psychologists connect this to something called Need For Cognition, a measurable personality trait describing how much a person craves complex, individual thought over simple, shared emotional experiences. High Need For Cognition people find group rituals mentally understimulating, not because they're superior, but because their reward system is literally wired for depth, not breadth. And that leads to a question I want you to carry through the rest of this video. If your brain isn't wired for group-based dopamine, what is it actually wired for? And is that alternative wiring secretly an advantage that society never taught you to recognize? Because the answer to that specific question is the part of this video that people screenshot and send to someone they love. So stay with it. But it goes deeper than dopamine, much deeper. There's a concept in psychology called identity fusion, where a person's individual sense of self becomes so completely merged with a group that they literally feel physical pain when that group fails. Sports fans experience this at measurable biological levels. Studies showed their testosterone levels actually drop after their team loses. Their cortisol, the stress hormone, spikes. Their mood, their sleep, their productivity for the next 24 to 48 hours is statistically tied to a game result they had zero control over. People who don't obsess over sports typically have lower identity fusion tendencies overall. Their self-worth is not outsourced to external outcomes. They don't need the team to win to feel okay about who they are. That's not coldness. Psychologists call that psychological self-containment, and it's rarer than you think. But here's the thing I'm not going to let you sit too comfortably with. Is psychological self-containment always a strength? Or does it come with a hidden emotional cost that nobody in these types of videos ever actually admits to? That's a question that only gets answered honestly after you understand what comes next. So hold it. Here's something the mainstream conversation never gives you credit for. Research consistently shows that individuals who don't rely on group identity for self-worth demonstrate higher internal locus of control. They believe their outcomes are shaped by their own choices, not fate, not luck, not whether 11 men on a field performed well on a particular Tuesday night. They also score measurably higher on openness to experience, one of the big 5 personality traits, directly linked to creativity, intellectual curiosity, and the ability to sit with complexity without needing a simple, clean answer. And here's something even more specific. Studies found that people who show low sports identification are statistically more likely to develop intrinsic motivation systems, meaning they do things because the thing itself matters to them, not because a crowd is watching or a scoreboard is keeping count. The person who checked out of the sports conversation at the office, they're not disengaged from life. They're running on a more self-directed, internally powered operating system. But right here, I want you to think about something that nobody talks about openly. If these personality traits are genuine neurological advantages, then why does society so consistently frame non-sports people as the ones who are missing out? Who actually benefits from that framing? And why does it still work on so many intelligent people? Don't answer it yet. Let it sit, because the answer is coming, and it's going to make you slightly angry in the best possible way.
Let's be completely honest about something that most content refuses to say out loud. Sports culture, especially in its obsessive tribal form, is one of the most sophisticated and profitable systems of manufactured belonging ever built. Billions of dollars are spent every single year engineering your emotional loyalty to a corporate brand wearing jerseys. The players get traded like assets. The club owners extract generational wealth. The stadium gets renamed after a bank. And the fan, the deeply, genuinely loyal fan, gets a dopamine hit, a sense of belonging, and a mental health dip when the season goes wrong. And if you don't participate in that system, if you look at it and feel nothing, you're the weird one. You're the one who doesn't get it. You're the one who needs to be fixed. But ask yourself, who decided that? Who built the social architecture where opting out of a multi-billion-dollar entertainment product makes you the antisocial one? Because when you see it clearly, the person who never caught the sports fever isn't missing the point. They might be the only one who was never successfully sold it. Now, I have to stop here and be honest with you, because this video would be doing you a disservice if I didn't say this. Some people don't connect with sports because they are genuinely wired differently. Their brain seeks depth. Their identity is internally constructed. That is everything we've been talking about, and it is completely real. But some people use intellectual detachment as a very sophisticated form of armor. They've been excluded before, from groups, from teams, from friendships. And somewhere along the way, I don't care about sports became a shield long before it ever became an identity. The detachment isn't personality. It's protection wearing the costume of personality. The question worth asking yourself, quietly, honestly, isn't whether you like sports. It's whether you struggle to feel like you belong anywhere at all, because one of those is a personality profile. The other is a wound that learned to dress itself as a personality profile. And this is where the final question lives. The one I want you to sit with until we reach the answers. Is it possible to be both, genuinely wired for solitude and depth, and simultaneously using that same wiring as an excuse to avoid the vulnerability of real belonging? And if someone is both, what do they actually do about it? That one doesn't have an easy answer, but it has an honest one.
There's a type of Saturday that people who don't follow sports understand in a way that's almost impossible to explain to someone who doesn't feel it. The game is on somewhere. The city is loud with it. Notifications are firing, group chats are exploding, but you're somewhere quiet, reading something that's slowly rewriting how you see the world, or building something with your hands, or just sitting in a room that feels entirely, completely yours. The light coming in at a specific angle, a specific song at low volume, a specific kind of silence that doesn't feel empty at all. And in that stillness, there is a richness,
a texture of being fully present inside your own life that 60,000 people screaming together in a stadium will never feel collectively, because that particular feeling can only be felt alone. That's not isolation, that's intimacy with your own mind, and not everyone gets to experience it. Okay. You stayed. Now I owe you everything. You asked why some brains go fully tribal over sports while others stay completely immune. Because identity fusion is biological and lives on a spectrum. Some people were neurologically wired and then socially conditioned from childhood to outsource their self-worth to group outcomes. Others were built with internal identity architecture strong enough that external group results never became load-bearing walls. You asked whether sports tribalism is healthy bonding or a borrowed identity. The honest answer is both exist. For some people, sports loyalty is genuinely the language their family used for love and togetherness, and that connection is real and valid. For many others, the identity was handed to them at age 6 by a father, a city, a culture, and they never once consciously chose it. The difference matters enormously. Chosen belonging is healthy. Inherited tribal loyalty you've never once examined, that is worth questioning. You asked what your brain is actually wired for, if not group dopamine, individual mastery, deep focus, intrinsic reward, the kind of satisfaction that comes not from winning alongside others, but from building something, understanding something, or creating something that did not exist before you made it. That reward system is quieter, it is slower, and in most meaningful ways, it is more sustainable. You asked whether self-containment is a strength or whether it carries a hidden cost. Both. The strength is that your internal world never collapses because of a scoreboard. The cost, and this is the part nobody says out loud, is that you can become so comfortable inside your own inner world that real intimacy, the kind that requires vulnerability and shared stakes, starts to feel genuinely threatening. Self-containment taken too far becomes self-isolation wearing a philosophical disguise. And the final question: can someone be both genuinely wired for depth and simultaneously using that depth as an excuse to avoid real belonging? Yes. Completely and honestly, yes. If this video felt like someone finally handed you the right language for something you've carried your whole life, subscribe, because this channel is built for exactly one type of person, the one who would rather understand something deeply than feel something shallowly. Depth over noise. Signal over spectacle. Now tell me in the comments, honestly, are you someone who genuinely doesn't connect with sports? Or do you secretly wish you could feel what they feel in those stadiums? No judgment. I actually want to know. And the next video goes into the psychology of people who are allergic to small talk, why certain people find surface-level conversation physically draining, where that comes from neurologically, and what it quietly costs them in ways they never expected. That one is going to hit even harder than this one did.